We up? All right. Sick, sick. All right. It's Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I'm about to start doing pomodoro sessions to finish my Renaissance lit readings. We moved away from Shakespeare, and now I'm reading M. Norbese Phillips' Zong, which is inspired by, connected to, but I know that the term comes from is basically a slave ship that was of which people owned a slave ship. They I'm so high right now. Sorry. They insured the slaves. They killed the slaves in order to collect on the insurance money. And probably part of that, it's honestly part of that thought leaving my head probably also has to do with just like the sheer evil connected with doing such a shit show horrible thing. And so let me actually get more direct. Zong massacre was a killing of more than 130 African enslaved people by the crew of the British slaver ship Zong on and in the days following 29th November 1781. William Gregson slave trading syndicate based in Liverpool owned the ship as part of the Atlantic slave trade. As was common business practice, they'd taken out insurance on the lives of the enslaved Africans as cargo. According to the crew, when the ship ran low on drinking water following navigational mistakes, the crew threw enslaved Africans overboard. This is just the introduction page on Wikipedia. Just like, yeah, I want to make sure. There's obviously so much behind this story that I would not be able to give due justice, but this is very, very intense stuff. It does make me think about the interesting nature of like discussing, like how do you discuss traumatic material? How do you go about approaching a discussion of traumatic material when people may have ancestral or otherwise ties to periods of history that are extremely just like ridden with evil, trying to figure out how to communicate how deep those pains go, how empathy does not, even with like ultimate empathy, it doesn't afford positionality. You can never really be where someone's at and understand where they're coming from if they tell you that there's this awful history of bad things that have happened that they can more directly connect to. And that connection is very, we can only empathize with that connection. We can't necessarily make our own ties to it. It's very weird. It's very difficult to try and like figure out how to communicate, you know, how there's so many limits to language, even being able to talk about it. Like I say Zong, and then I honestly just kind of freeze framed, like I don't even put this in words, and based on what I know, and then High Thoughts comes back in, look it up, and then I'm like, oh, it's written down. But then even the Wikipedia, it goes into further detail, but even then, like the very first section ends with like the crew states this was the reason that they had to do some fucked up shit. But it's like, it's not very difficult for people to imagine otherwise. And that lack of difficulty in being able to imagine the evils that people are capable of, very weird. Very, very weird. You know? Anyways, gonna get started on my reading with Zong. And Zong is not a text about the massacre. I believe it is inspired by. It is a poem. It's a. Is it a poem? I. I have no idea. I have no prior relation to this book. I only know. We went over a little bit in class. Tells us here, yeah. Yeah, it's a text, and I'm gonna read it, and we're gonna see how it goes. I'm just gonna be real. I don't really have any prior connection with or affinity with. Not affinity with. No, that's not true. I have no experience prior with this book, but just knowing what I know about the history behind where the title comes from is very. It's already like, I don't know. It just feels really heavy. Like it's hard to talk right now. It's hard for me to. It's just very consuming. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Throw on some tunes. That shit is heavy. It's very interesting. The structure of it is unlike anything that I've really read before. It's definitely it's so all these thoughts mulling around, not entirely sure where to start. The first thing I did when I looked at the text was that it has a glossary of terms that are in the very back. Contains terms in Yoruba, in Portuguese, in Latin, in let me see, where is it? Should be page 183. Yeah, terms in Arabic, Dutch, Fon, French, Greek, Hebrew, Latin, Portuguese, Spanish, Shona, Twi, West African, Patois, Yoruba, and it also contains a manifest African groups and languages, Bantu, Edo, Ewe, Fante, Fon, Igbo, Lua, Rada, San, Shona, and Twi. I don't know if I'm saying those right. Animals, a list of animals, body parts with different languages as well. It's like arm, cunt, tit, torso, nail, head, and then it also has in other languages, bras, mano, ongo, perna, pied. I imagine it's pied is foot, mano, hand. I don't know the others. And then crew names: Alf, Dan, Dave, Don, Ed, Hams, Hans, Jesus, or Jesus, Jim, John, Mike, Ned, Peter, Piet, Roy, Sam, Ted, Tim, and Tom. There's women who wait list as well. Nature. It says asters, bog, cairn, corn. Okay, things from, and then food and drink. So different things that were on the ship. And I went there to see, I would probably have to reference like over and over again to get a lot of the intricacies, but I took Latin in high school. I took Italian for my undergrad and my master's program, so I have like a okay grasp on like at least like generally figuring out the meaning of like the general meaning, if not tone, of Romance languages. The other stuff is for sure like over my head, so definitely my first time learning about all this stuff. And in terms of having any kind of interaction with African languages, I know I don't think I have. I think the first time it ever came to me directly was like listening to like a video of like Israel Adesanya speak in Yoruba on his like YouTube channel or something. And oh man, languages are so interesting. There's also that person on YouTube, Xiaomi, and the person who does like learns all these different languages and then goes and gets himself in public like using these languages. Man, definitely want to brush up, be able to brush up on my Italian, but then also try to move away from Romance languages and try to learn something else, like non-romance related. Maybe Japanese, make reading manga easier. I don't know. This is super. The language stuff is very interesting, but it's really hard to. It's kind of the whole point of today's thought process is that it's so difficult to communicate in language. Like there's a glossary here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different language, like terms from over 10 languages, about 15 languages. And that's really the level of complexity that's necessary to understand as you got to understand how ideas and languages come together. It's very complicated, and just being able to express ideas using words in a way that other people can understand is extremely difficult to do. And to be able to do it in multiple languages across, all these different cultural spans, and then weave them together in this poetry text that I'm reading is pretty impressive. It's
very different structurally speaking. Like the words are spread out over the page. Your eyes do. It is interesting that like the structure of the text is built on being able to read linearly, like from left to right. But I honestly don't know if that's necessarily the case. I haven't tried doing it otherwise. But with these kinds of texts that have like an atypical structure, I mean, maybe it's not even meant to, how do I even know how it's meant to be read? You know what I mean? It's really starting to fuck with my head, not being able to like really like not in a bad way fuck with my head, but in a good way, that like it's impossible to categorize things, language, like using words to be able to ascribe meaning to things that you feel or see in the material world or interact with. Like, how can you even call it sight? It's just so difficult to talk, to be able to express yourself and stay connected to a thread of thought that doesn't veer off into any one of the available multiplicities of being at any moment. And I think this is, this text is, it's like very much concerned with the Zong massacre, and having the shit manifest at the end of the text, and then the movement through what I'm reading so far into all these. Oh, did I even hit the break button? Into all these different I feel like all these different emotive, affective reactions to reading the text. There's I wrote some things down. The standout poems were, I mean, if you could call it whatever, standout pieces that were delineated in a way that I could like mark out or number. They're, the first section of Zong, they're numbered, so it's through 26, I believe, and it was 1, 11, 14, and 21. So number 1, the elongation of tones and words, the grasping of words for thirst. They're pain laden, they're stretched thin. It's like the speech has repeating letters and is spread out to break up the letters, and it moves through like going through the reading and trying to like have your eyes as they move through space trying to put together what you're reading, because it's so disjointed and so fractured and so like it feels stretchy because of the multiple use of like the same letters attached to words. It's like the elongation of consonants or vowel sounds, like it's just syllabic elongation, and it feels very like pain laden because the idea that the slaves were dying of thirst, and the poem is calling for is repeating the word water, as well as that's one of the things that's like stretched out, and it just felt like it was a way of, I felt like a linguistic way of trying to show like grasping for thirst. Number 11, the brutality of civilization. It discusses like laws, and there's a line in it about what if laws are supported and they're unjust? What if they're persecutory laws and they're supported nonetheless? What do you consider it then? And that becomes like, let me find that shit real quick. Yeah, suppose the law is not, does not, would not, be not. Suppose the law not a crime. Suppose the law a loss. Suppose the law, suppose. And I just thought about that, and I was like, oh man, yeah, like what is that saying? I mean, it's up for interpretation, but to me the way I interpret it is, what if the law doesn't do what it's supposed to do, is not doing what it's like. Suppose it's not, suppose it does not, suppose it would not, suppose it be not, suppose the law not. So suppose not the law, suppose a crime, suppose the law leads to loss. It's all suppositions. The repeating of the word suppose and its connection to law, it really makes it, I feel like it's making a statement about how laws, like the way that you govern, whether it's like on a state level or personal level, they're very much based on suppositions that you have about the way the world is structured or the way you view the world, and that's very much like up for grabs and interpretation, and it's really difficult to figure out where that line is, how do you interpret the world in such a way that it's what? I guess it depends on what your purpose is. You can interpret it in a lot of different ways. A lot of people will like to focus on like the utilitarian aspect of like how you can look at the world. But the world isn't predominantly utilitarian. Like if we did that, we would be robots. Like we don't interact with it that way. And that's just separate from and that's just thinking about it generally speaking. And then when you move to the conversation of like slavery and like a slave massacre, it's like, what the fuck is a law? Like, it's just a set of rules and regulations in place for people to be able to legally profit from fucking other people over in the most heinous of ways. And it's just and the communication of that kind of pain through words, it's like, I don't even know if what I'm reading when I'm reading this poetry text is the depiction of pain, or if it's just the depiction of things around it, because the pain itself is pretty much impossible to describe, right? It's like beyond words. So many things are beyond words. It's so difficult to try and figure out what are the right words to say when you're trying to say something to somebody, because being able to be in touch with all the facets of how you are expressing a thought, how that is congruent with your own actions, your own emotions, your own, rational and emotive processes in a synergistic way, that's like its own task. And then being able to do it with other people is like, you might as well be fucking playing infinity pool with a universe of billiards that are just always clacking around everywhere. I don't know. Well, I'm going to get back to reading this text, and just keep thinking about that, how awesome it is to be moved in this way by language, by words, but how also, the atypicality of structure, the playing around, it's very, it's the defying of tradition and convention when it comes to the way that you're supposed to read something, the way you're supposed to write something, the way you're supposed to write something that's meant to be read. It's very interesting. Okay. All right. Let's pop this over here. Scoot this bad boy. All right. Alright, I put some coffee on the pot. Probably going to be drinking some of that. So, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a longer break, I guess. I probably should have put that on, but I don't know. I'm just playing it by ear. This text it's getting, I'm not going to lie, I'm getting kind of like at the end of at this point, it's more, I've moved, it's difficult to stay connected to the emotional content so extendedly throughout when so much of my purview is kind of preoccupied with the structural layout of the text. Just trying to read it is its own exercise, so I feel like it's going to take me some time to like go back, revisit different aspects of it and like how I feel about it, and you know what I visualize while I'm reading. And you know, the glossary, honestly, it's the certain things I can understand, the romance languages stuff, like I said before, but the other stuff, it's like I have to go back and reference. You know, there's things I remember from my first read through of the glossary, so I just kind of went with that. This is my first initial read through, and gonna go back through and like review and skim it more take more notes after I am done reading it. But I don't know, I'm just feeling kind of like slow right now. Not because of the weed. I know what that is like. I think mainly it's just like I want coffee. So I put some coffee in the mocha pot, and I'm gonna pop that in. I just pop that on, and that should be done in a little bit. man, I think I want to eat like I'm so hungry. I think I want to eat like a PB&J sandwich and like an apple. Like that sounds really really good. Yeah, that sounds like a fuck. Ooh, that sounds amazing. I might have to do that. Okay, so I'm probably just gonna fade back and do that real quick, and then I'm gonna get back to it. Go to your bed, Jess. Go to your bed. Go over here. Come here, bro. Good girl. Sit. Sit. No, no, no. Sit. Love you, Chimbo. Love you, Chimbo.
You know what I'm saying?
Check it out. First album, last.
Yeah, still was still difficult to go through that text with the structural layout and stuff, but it's just crazy, man. Being able to communicate in words is tough. One of the things that, excuse me, one of the things that makes this book so cool is that it is comprised of words it's exclusively comprised of words that make up the court documents for the case that deemed the Zong massacre legal. which is pretty fucking nuts when you think about it. It's really, really crazy to use a document that essentially writes into law that it's okay for you to kill slaves for the insurance money. Not only is support the institution of slavery and say you can kill slaves for insurance money, then use the words from that legal case to write a poem that deeply, a whole book that, I mean, this book is almost like, not including credits or anything, like it's almost 200 pages, and it's all comprised of words that were found in the court documents that sanction this evil. It's crazy to think about, you know? So sad, so fucked up, so fucked up. How do you even, and like the, you know, the structure, the wording, the wall that is put up, no, not the, there's a certain level of difficulty that the reader has coming to the text to be able to engage in it in a meaningful way. Because of its atypical structure, it's very much on the reader to, you know, put things together in a much more intensive way than if you were just reading something outright in a normal form that you're used to. You know, this text is not only broken up, you know, it's meant to read like lines, but they're spaced apart in variable ways. They're spaced apart by, you know, with words in chunks, and then also, you know, fragmenting the words themselves. And so it really becomes a thing, just to, like, a whole process just to be able to read it and be able to make sense of like a line that you read, you know. Like if I just go by the stops, like where their natural breaks are. Let me read this line, okay? It start like, let's see here. Let me find I don't even know where to start. There's like, where are you supposed to start? Let's go back up to the beginning of the last section, harem. Okay, so me I sing song for Ogun El, son of Iron come bring our masks. Let the play begin. We each act the part. In murder, what will they? How do they? The bones say what cannot be give voice to a tale. One. So that's weird, incomprehensible phrasing when I break it up separate, when they're in those fragments. When you put it together and you read it as if they've been put down in a line from start to finish in a natural sentence phrasing. Me, I sing song for Ogun, El son of Iron. Come bring our masks, let the play begin. We each act the part in murder. What will they? How do they? The bones say what cannot be. Give voice to a tale. One tale, their tale. And this is like, in that way, it becomes like, oh man, this is a very... It kind of reminds me of how difficult it is to read Shakespeare, which is interesting because Hamlet is quoted in here at the beginning of chapter headings, I think once, if not twice. And it reminds me of how difficult it is to read like Shakespearean sonnets or plays, because you're trying to get like a feel for the tempo, the rhythm of the speech. And then when you have that, and then you can, you know, then you can kind of more easily decipher what's being said. This the awkwardness of learning how to read something and hear it in your mind at the same time. Very interesting. And I think that's a comment. The structural aspects of this text really tie into the content, because in the same way that this text is made up of so many different fragments that are difficult to legibly understand until you develop a certain I guess like you put in a certain amount of effort into familiarizing yourself with the structure of how things are being formulated. And that's a lot like understanding the history of enslavement of African peoples. I think that it's something akin to like my interaction with this text. I come to this only being able to understand fragments of a story. Just like the structure provides fragments of words and phrases, and there's a way to piece them together that is understandable, comprehensible, that the writer has put forth, therefore the history has put forth. But the comprehending of those different fragments requires understanding a glossary of terms, understanding a history of thought that is very deep, very complex, very multi-layered, multifaceted, just like the glossary in this text. And ultimately, it is still... It's like open for examination, but I can't produce the connection to something like this, which I don't think is something bad. I think that the gap between my examination of the text and my ability to examine the text and my inability to produce a real connection with the history of this material, because of my lack of lived experience within that particular history, the best thing that happens is like my examination gets within like a saran wrap thin layer of closeness to understanding the deep historical issues, the ramifications, ideological, threats that engendered slavery, particularly African enslavement, which is like, people like to do this thing where they're like, everyone was a slave, man. And I'm like, yeah, but like, let's not do that thing where we try to disingenuously use the ability to look at history from a variety of scaling perspectives and kind of swap out scales for scales. I don't think it works that way. I think it's important to acknowledge very particular context, and to acknowledge that you can only acknowledge a certain degree of that particular context because of your lack of connection to things that you can examine, learn to understand, but not maybe necessarily produce a genuine connection to. A human connection, sure, but even between like being a human person and like, there's a lot of gap between being a human person and your own lived experience, the context of your own lived experience. And there's nothing in my life that like allows me to reach into a connection with this material past my level of examination, which is not to say that my level of examination or empathy is shallow. It just means no matter how deep I go, it's important to acknowledge that this is it's like rap music. It's like being a white dude in rap. You're just like, you're a guest in the house, and it's not your house, and you don't make the house. It doesn't mean that you're unwelcome. It just means what it means. And it means a lot, I don't know, just thinking about it it's intense for sure. Did I hit so I'm on a long break, yeah. I think it was just naturally like 4. So I think I only took a couple more minutes longer than my regular break to take some coffee. And I kind of skip in and out, like, I'm high, bro. I'm having fun. This is more just to keep me on track so I don't have too much fun. So I want to have fun, but I want to focus. I want to stay, dialed in. It is interesting, though, just the act of reading and getting into the flow of reading. It makes me realize how, like, hungry I get while I do it, how thirsty I get while I do it, and how fidgety I get also. like I need to do something with my hands or something while I'm doing it, because I just have all these thoughts, and I feel like if I diverge into notes a little too much, then it kind of takes away from my reading in the moment. Whereas like I'm not gonna forget, you know, if I have initial thoughts, I will write those down. But it's like I could have initial thoughts every couple of seconds. It's more of a matter of prioritizing. You know, do I want to take notes at this? Does this need to be a note, or is this something I know that like my brain will flick back to pretty quickly? All right, I'm gonna fill my water bottle and then I'm gonna get back to it. But you're. Oh shit. Okay. All right. A couple more minutes. We're back to it. It's like almost 4 now. I got back day today at the gym afterwards. Always look forward to physical activity after I'm done doing studying. Gets me out of my head. Gives the ideas a chance to, I don't know, maybe this is silly, like soak into my body. You know? Anyways, let's go.
Ooh, shit. God damn. Whew. Yankees. Yankee. I understand what the snake is. Brankies. Play fade buddies. Play praise to keep the maintain happy. I had that. Had to be one. I was those little ones.
Oh shit, did the video go out? Huh. I wonder when that happened. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so damn, that was tough, dude. I got about like 20 pages from the end, and I started reading ahead, and then reading my way backwards, skimming backwards. Again, like this is, I think that like my affective response to this is very much like Fried, and the structure is exhausting to contemplate. And I know that's weird because it's just basically like it's just reading out of normal frame, but just that in itself is very you're paying so much attention just trying to put the words together, that trying to think about the context of the meaning just slows you down so much. And I don't think I'd be able to. This is gonna need like multiple rereads, different points, and I don't know necessarily if like the fragments stand on their own inside the sentence structure. Does that mean that it is? Oh, I start the break. Does that mean that I can also look at this fragmentarily and be able to, take different parts for what they are on their own as well? That's kind of what I started doing near the end. So I have a couple of more articles and stuff to read, 3 more articles, and then an interview, which is several pages as well. These are all in response to or in some way related to Zong. So yeah, just checking out, where does this, I don't even know what I'm saying right now. I'm just reading this while I'm thinking about it. Mad weird. It is interesting the way that like I kind of understand what is being said when these kinds of words are used, like this sentence, okay? I would love to begin by suggesting a disfluent interview, one that acknowledges the gap, absence, doubt, and imposed weight of expressivity that lurks ontological in so much of your work. Like that is such a densely packed sentence that to understand like what is being stated is so, and it kind of shows like how you can kind of understand how they're kind of playing like neologistic wording and such, and that's not like that's cool, but it just goes to show like, oh man, I gotta make up words in order to say exactly what it is I'm trying to say. Words like ontological, untellings, recovery or reordering of a frame of understanding, ununderstanding, also known as ununderstanding. I don't even know what, like I kind of understand what they're saying, but they're just, I guess they're trying to say that there's all this stuff going on that we can't touch. There's all this pain, all this history, that kind of constitutes a level of spirituality across humans, and the earth and our interaction with it and such. Like, I guess it's hard exactly to place where those interactions, like where the meaning for them is created or inherent, but it's really interesting to think about how... Is that a bird or a rat sound? They sound so similar. It's so weird. Yeah, it's just like, how do you... Like, it's very difficult to be able to place exactly what's going on in the world. All the different levels at which history, religion, human experience, individual choice, and determinism kind of meet and interact. And the interview is kind of... At least starts out by asking... what are, let's see, how does M. Nurbese Phillips' poetry functions as, quote, regenerative, unquote, within these gaps and silences? Basically all the stuff that's, like, not said. It seems to apply to functional spirituality. It states, that says something interesting. It seems to imply two functions of spirituality: one that constantly remains in the unknown as poetic function, or one that attempts to inhabit these unknowns, disfluent spaces, as site of reclamation. Are these mutually exclusive? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that's a non-dualism thought. Like, two functions of spirituality are not necessarily mutually exclusive. I think they're both, like... I mean, the question is not being posed to me. It's being posed to someone way more intelligent than me talking about their poetry. But I just mean, generally, how I look at it is, what is unknown and what is inhabited is, they're not two separate things. They're just not. But they're also not a holistic unity. They function in a sort of symbiosis. And the space between them, where, like, weird shit happens, it's tough to contend with. So. How much time do I got in this break? A couple more seconds. Alright, so... It's interesting because last week we read The Tempest, and M. Nurbese Philip was inspired by... Like, she says, I want to begin with a Shakespearean character who is simultaneously absent and present. Sycorax, mother of Caliban, sole inhabitor of the island Prospero, and his daughter Miranda find themselves washed up upon. Prospero calls her out of her name. She's a blue-eyed hag, damned witch, laid with the devil herself. She's a cipher, named yet unseen. Indeed, by the time the play opens, she's dead. Although her presence is palpable, her genealogy stretches backwards and forwards to include those like her who carry a certain kind of knowing, and within that genealogy, Nurbese Philip places Sete Adamu Boteng, identified as the voice of the ancestors, as on the cover of Zong. She who recounts the story can only be told by not being told. The story that can never yet must be told, through being present and absent. What I'm saying as a poet is that Sycorax stands in for all that is subterranean and subaqueous in cultures which have been colonized. Perhaps it is she who is a story that is always told yet never told. And I think that's kind of like... I would, looking at the Tao Te Ching, just thinking about the ways that the Tao Te Ching is very simple, very repetitive, very, incomprehensible almost. And all those things actually create the conditions necessary for you to examine the deep, unspeakable nature of life that can also be understood to a degree. It can be understood, but it's difficult to speak. That's why it's so hard to understand, like, how to express oneself using words. That's why I put the thumbnail for this video is the real poneglyph from One Piece. It's like there's so much information of history that is lost to us because we don't have the keys or knowledge of a language to be able to express those thoughts. I think when Nurbese Philip is talking about like how difficult it is to explain the things that are in the in-between places. Like, from my own experience, totally unrelated, like not like on a scale of simply in-betweenness, not hardship, not evil done to me or anything like that. Just speaking purely in the context of in-betweenness. I know on a very, 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 very small scale that the experience of being an American-born, Indian-raised person creates these like experiential gaps that are very difficult to explain to people unless they already understand. The explicability of them, like, or not the explicitness with which I can convey my experience of living in between those two worlds is like it only gets close to what I'm trying to say, you know? But I can't actually explain it because it's super fucking weird. It's really, really weird shit. Like I can kind of paint a structure for you, like a scenario that, or a narrative that kind of showcases points where I felt those differences, that in-betweenness the most. But it's still really hard to like put into words how weird that feels. And that's just me being a person in my small experience. So historical events and like generational trauma and like the deep unsettling nature of the evils that human beings have committed against each other that have led to the creation of the world that we live in and enjoy today, or live in and don't enjoy today. It's very, very difficult to try and understand that because it's always in that in-between place. Things that happen, but they're happening now because they led to what's happening now. How do we contend with that? I don't know. I'm gonna keep going though. We're gonna see how long we get today. So cool, yeah. Bam. Hey. Guys, turn it down. Guys, go to your bed. Come here, Jax. Go. Go to your bed. Come here. Up, up, up. Go to your bed. Good job. Good girl, Chief. Sit. Sit. Sit, you big booty. Good girl. You're so good.
Yo.
Jax, come here. Come here, dude. Come on, bud. Sit. Good job.
Yo. Yo. Yo.
Damn, the thing's stuck. Alright, I'll get it later. knew it. I fucking knew it. Crazy. Yo, remember what I said about, like, would I be able to take these fragmented pieces and be able to read them out of order? She says in the interview, although there appears to be a progression, the text can be read in any order. You can read the individual pages backwards or even a slant. Fucking, that's what the fuck I said, man. That's crazy. That was the whole point. Is the idea that it's... This is like the whole concept of how the world works. Like, they're interchangeable parts. They're not all the same. But they can be moved around to create a multifocal story. Nobody's wrong. Nobody's right. Everybody could be the right or wrong person depending on where you stand. The holding of non-duality in your hand at all times. It's so much less. And look, I'm very much. It's very difficult to explain into words because once you try to use words, you fall into the trap of definitions again. And maybe that is why academic language is attempting to do play very interesting word games. And those word games kind of come across to conservatives or like right-leaning people as like you're fucking with the substructure of reality, but it's more like the fucking with the substructure upon which we base our understanding of reality. But that understanding, while it creates a very specific world around us, is missing a lot. And being able to line up with those things is that it's missing. It's kind of, you have to kind of talk around it and just accept that, like, the more you talk around it, the more you can get an idea of what it's like. You can never actually hold it in your hand, experience it, because it just can't be done that way. But you can get as close as possible, and maybe when you accept as close as possible, you permeate that barrier into understanding. When you just truly accept that, like, people have a legitimate point of view from wherever it is they're coming from, even if it is directly antithetical to a position that you might hold. And it's different because, like, I'm not talking about, like, oh yeah, let's just excuse evil shit. It has to be, this is like something I feel like has to be felt. The understanding of that, so that it isn't used for, like, nefarious ends. But you don't want to use the non-duality argument to just excuse bullshit, you know? So yeah, it's tough, man. It's fucking weird. Anyways, that is the end of that. And yeah, I don't know. I got a lot more to read, a lot more to go into. I think I might do some of this. So, like, I don't do all of my studying on this, on, like, the stream or anything like that. It's just when I have time and I want to sit down for a long amount of time and, like, do this specifically. Sometimes I'll do it more piecemeal, or I'll do it longer, but I'll break it up throughout a day where I may have more stuff to do. But if I have time, I like to sit down and do this. This is really fun. And yeah, I don't know. I think, should I just keep going and see how much more do I have to read? Let's take a gander. Let's see. Guys, cut it out. Chill. Let's see. This is 93 pages. This is 312 pages. This is 16 pages. Am I to read all of these or sections? So page 1 through 67 of In the Wake. So instead of the 93 pages, it's 67 pages. Yes. Let's see. Postmentier. Is that... Did I miss that one? Lyrical ecology of modern black literature. So that's the lyrical ecology. Where's that one at? Unnatural catastrophe. Okay, so that's in Coda. That's 16 pages. And the Morgan Reckoning with Slavery is chapters, introduction, conclusion, chapters 1 and 2. So like a couple of hundred more pages. And it's definitely going to be easier to go through these, like when it's not, poetry or fiction or, it's a little bit easier to understand structurally speaking what's going on. Get an idea of things without necessarily have to go like deep into the weeds, The more you read, you realize you don't really need to like read every single fucking word to understand what's being said. Okay, let's maybe I'll save this stuff for later. I'm kind of ready to go to the gym now. So I think I'm going to do that. All right. Well, thanks so much for hanging out if you did, and even if you didn't, this is so much fun. I'm so lucky. I just get to read and learn and teach for a living, I mean, right now it's my living. I'm a student, but it's really great to be able to do all this. It's so dope. Definitely mad blessed. Well, thanks again and much love, y'all. I'll catch you on the flip side. I'm gonna hit the gym and then I'm gonna do some reading on my own later while I maybe watch have the Mandalorian on in the background or something. All right, peace. One for the road. All right, we out.